to that, how crazy is it that like if someone says that they believe in the flat Earth, I mean, it's common now to have people
I
that
mean,
believe that. Like,
look,
isn't that crazy?
man. Like, have you ever been in space? Do you have any direct evidence that the Earth is round? Why do you think the Earth is round?
It's what they want us to believe. They don't want us to get past the ice wall.
Yeah, so you're a flat earther too.
No, I've heard of it. But that's crazy because there's people that say that, but that's not as crazy as what other people are saying. Like,
Because
not
it's
as
different
far.
than what everybody else believes. It's like, let's take every single thing and inject controversy into it so that we can get attention on social media and get some more followers and some more likes. So, like, let's take something as straightforward as the Earth is a sphere. Something that, like, we've all agreed on for a long time. And if I can make, like, an argument that makes it seem like it's possible the Earth is flat, I'll get attention. It'll be talked about. Like, Steph Curry made some joke about the flat Earth thing. I think Kyrie Irving was the basketball player. It's basketball players that are really perpetuating the flat Earth thing. And if you think about it, like, those interviews that they did where they talked about the flat Earth stuff, nobody would have cared about those. They wouldn't have gotten any retweets. They wouldn't have gotten any attention. Like, it wouldn't have helped, like, name recognition for those guys if they did those interviews and didn't say something like that. So while everybody else is zigging, they give it a little zag. Come up with something more controversial. And that's like the downside of social media, I guess.
Yeah, Twitter's a cesspool. Like, Twitter, if you're two-way right-leaning or if you're two-way left-leaning, like, Twitter is just... Twitter's and social media can be an amazing thing because it can connect people throughout the world, but it's also terrible because you can inject any type of vile, detrimental idea into society and it can catch fire and spread.
So how do we get the normal average person to be more moderate and nuanced again?
I don't think we can. I think it's a lost cause.
See, I don't think it's a lost cause.
Well, what do you think about Trump? Do you think he actually, because we were talking about this off air, we talked about how, you know how you've heard Trump's comments about wind energy?
Yeah.
I mean, at what point do you think, does he actually believe that, or is he just trolling people at that, like, whenever he says stuff like that?
I mean, we all have to keep in mind that, like, he's not trying to build a majority coalition. Like, it's not, unlike other presidents, he's not trying to drive his approval rating as high as it can go. He has gone a different way strategically, whether he consciously realizes this or not, where he's just trying to appeal to, like, the 25 or 30% of the population that's just all in on all of the values that he espouses and all of the things that he says. And so really, like, he's just, like, putting on a show and performing for them. And I mean, like, those, his base, like, I don't know if they really, like, believe some of the stuff he says or not, but, like, that's the percentage of the population that he's appealing to. But it goes back to what I'm saying, where, like, social media has created this incentive structure for people to come up with the most ridiculous, contrarian thing possible and throw us into this tailspin of debate. Like, if Trump goes up there and gives a speech, like every other president, where he talks about the positives of trying to revitalize our economy through green energy, or how we have to be more conscientious about the future of our environment, or something like that, nobody cares about it. Nobody's going to watch that. But if he goes out there and says a wind turbine and wind energy gives you cancer, then we end up talking about it in this room like 3 weeks later, and he gets attention, and he gets name recognition, and he can do things with that. It becomes advantageous to him, so it circles back around and it ends up being this, like, positive incentive for him.
I was talking with Andy and I told him that for me, I think he's just trolling and trying to get attention, and that I believe that he's much more than what he acts, and I sometimes it may just be nuance maybe, but I feel like he just wants to poke the media. He just wants to bring attention to himself, because I think I told you a while back that I saw him in person, and I'm not like a never Trump guy. Like, I'm not like, he's terrible, but I do believe that he isn't the best qualified person to be a president. I do believe that he isn't a good person at all, but since he is a president, I went and saw him, and when you see him in person, he's like a stand-up comedian. Like, he can connect with people like that. He's on his toes, he's making jokes, and I could see how he could win again and how he won in 2016 because he can connect with people.
Well, it's interesting, and it captures people's attention, and because they've never seen a dignitary act in that way before, and so through that, like, he's able to dominate the headlines, and he's able to push like other stories that should be getting attention, like kids being separated from their parents at the border, or the Mueller report, or whatever, like kind of nastier policy is coming out. He's able to push those things out of the news because he goes and does ridiculous things. But like, I think that we've all probably done something like that on social media at some point. Like, everybody's kind of going one way, and we decide, hey, like, let's give a really contrarian opinion just to like spice things up and see what happens. Every year I taught government, like, I always would have a kid come up to me, and he would, like, every year at least one student would be like, I'm going to say the opposite of what everybody else says so that we can stoke up debate.
Jordan.
And so we can stoke up controversy. And I mean, Jordy was one of those kids, and he would start breathing really hard and get really excited. Bless his little heart. I was afraid he was gonna have a heart attack. He was like a hummingbird flapping its wings. It's like, can he keep that up?
Shout out to Jordy, Chandler, and
Yeah,
Jeremy.
seriously. But like, we like the debate, but we don't like the nuance. And I think that that's like causing us to even further splinter. But I do think that there's a way to get the middle back.
How? Tell me.
So going into the 2020 presidential election, all of these different candidates are talking about all of these different issues. They're talking about the environment. They're talking about healthcare. They're talking about all of these things. Which issue going into 2020 do you think is the most important? You're young people. I'm already like half old. Like, I'm old and half dead. You're going to inherit this from me whenever I retire.
Yes.
What issue is the most important to you?
For me, it's probably the environment.
Wrong.
Would it not be healthcare?
Wrong.
No.
Social issues.
Like what?
Well, not for me, but from what I feel, the current vibe is just the social inequality and inequity in our society.
So these are all important issues, but I do think that there is one issue that we should be on the lookout for in terms of like 2020 candidates when we evaluate them. And I think that the candidate that leads with this issue is the one that we should support. And I think that we should support them because they can bring the middle back and start to depolarize us so that we can actually solve some of these issues. Because that's the problem, is that like with this heightened degree of polarization that we're living in right now, and we see it every day on Twitter, you're like, it doesn't matter who gets elected, right, left, center, Republican, Democrat, whatever. We're not going to be able to solve healthcare because we're too polarized. It's never going to pass through Congress. It's never going to get signed by the president, whoever that person is. Same thing with like policies, like social welfare policies. It's all the social inequality problem. We're never going to actually get those policies through government because it's too polarized. Same thing with the environment. Same thing with like meaningful reforms to try to get rid of all of the segregation and discrimination that's left in our society. We're not going to get those things passed because the government's too polarized. The only way we can make the government less polarized is if we push towards 100% turnout and 100% participation, because we know that when voter turnout and participation rates go low, the electorate is disproportionately extreme right and extreme left. The issue that's the most important going into 2020 are policies to improve the health of our democracy. We have to make it easier for people to register to vote. We have to make it easier for people to actually vote so that we start to take away some of these reasons that people don't vote, so that we can push out turnout in that middle that sags when voter turnout goes down. Because if we can get more people in the center, we can get participation higher, we will end up with candidates that are a little bit more moderate, a little bit more nuanced, and a little bit more representative of maybe what we are deep down inside, to the points where we can actually maybe come up with sensible solutions to all of these problems that are maybe a little bit sexier to talk about.
But it's a problem. How are you going to get people to vote for the people that can't vote? Because the people that can't vote won't be able to vote for having their right to vote be more easier to have access to. Because then that's going to be a problem. You're going to have extreme, whatever ideology they are, they're going to say, well, we don't want to do this because then we're gonna lose power, and then we have to change, and we have to change on our platforms. And if those people that are in the middle can't vote, who's gonna vote for them?
Well, so to address the issue of, well, the people aren't voting, so they're not going to vote for people that'll make it easier for them to vote, so that we get more moderate candidates. That whole problem. I don't think that like a lot of those people are just like sitting on the couch being completely apathetic. Like I think that in some states, based on photo ID laws and voter ID laws and things like that, there are people that are like legitimately wanting to go vote and they just can't, or like there's just such a high barrier. And so maybe if you have a candidate that comes along and says like, I want to push these reforms to make it easier to participate in our political system, maybe that gives them the incentive to overcome whatever like smaller barriers in their way to participate that one time to make our democracy more democratic. Because I don't think that like people don't want to participate. They don't want to participate because they don't think it matters. And that makes them sad, and it makes them angry, and that makes them frustrated. So they just say, I'm out. Deuce, I can't do this, it makes me too upset. But I think if there was a promise that we could create a democratic system and come up with some democratic reforms that made a direct line path from voting to the actual candidates that are elected to the policies all being kind of representative of the average person, some of that frustration would go away and people would want to overcome those barriers.
I hope that does happen because I think one thing in life that should apply to everything is everything in moderation is good. So although we would like drastic changes, like make sure clean air, clean energy for all, like AOC's plan, it's just too drastic, and we all know that change to happen has to be in increments, it has to be slow, and we can't be too far right, we can't be too far left. Everything in moderation is great. If you eat too much, you're fat. If you eat too little, you're anemic. It's just everything in life is everything in moderation.
She's trying to have a big universal theme here.
Everything in moderation is good, and that should apply in policy as well.
Shout out to all the English teachers at Dunham.
Now here's the problem with that.
Yeah.
Is underneath all of those issues, and I think that over these next couple of elections, like we're gonna dictate what this looks like for our country for the next generation. And I think that this is like the big question that like Trump is really like called into question. What are our values as Americans? Like what do we believe in? Like what is America supposed to look like? Who's supposed to be in America? What is that supposed to be? What do we believe in? And so like those values have been called into question, perhaps like more so than ever before, because you have a president that doesn't really respect those institutions of government and we kind of want to burn them to the ground, and isn't really all that interested in preserving that.